Today's conversation is with someone many of you already may feel certainly in the Los Angeles area. Maria Quiban Whitesell has been a familiar, trusted presence in people's homes for decades. And as a journalist and television reporter, she spent her career telling other people's stories with clarity and compassion. But several years ago, her life asked her to step into a story that she never would have chosen. Maria's husband, Sean Whitesell, a writer and producer, was diagnosed with glioblastoma. It's an aggressive brain cancer. What followed was a season of anticipatory grief, caregiving, heartbreak, all while Maria continued working, raising their young son, and trying to hold a family together as the ground beneath it was already breaking apart. And after Sean's death, Maria found herself in a new and unfamiliar landscape, life after loss. Instead of turning away from that terrain, she chose to tell the truth about it. Her book, You Can't Do It Alone, was written with a licensed therapist and is part memoir, part roadmap for anyone navigating illness, caregiving, grief, and the long road forward. And it speaks directly to those who are doing so much, holding so much, and quietly wondering how they're supposed to survive what they are living through. This conversation on Crying Out Loud is about anticipatory grief, parenting while brokenhearted, identity loss, the power of community, and what it really means to accept help when everything in you wants to keep going on your own. I'm so excited to have this conversation with Maria Quiban Whitesell. Welcome to Crying Out Loud. I'm Dr. Laura Berman, and this is your grief companion. Join me to learn how to soften the pain, steady the nervous system, and connect to your loved ones on the other side. None of us were meant to grieve alone. So let's cry out loud together.
So I'm crying out loud. I'm not holding it in. I'm shrinking my heart.
Maria Quiban Whitesell, thank you so much for joining us on Crying Out Loud.
Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm so happy to talk to you. Now, you and I met my husband laughs when I say this, but at the Grieftastic, love that title, at the Grieftastic book fair this fall. And, it was so wonderful meeting you and talking to you. And I was like, okay, you got to come on the show because you have such a beautiful story. And I'm really excited and grateful that you're here because your story holds so many layers of grief, right? You've got the caregiving piece with someone who's facing, in this case, a terminal illness, the anticipatory grief, the parenting through grief, working, in a really high profile, intensive public job, and then navigating life after loss, So there's so many themes that I want to explore with you, and I'm excited to talk to you about. But before we dive in, before we talk about loss, I just want to begin with love, where I always like to start and end. And wondering if, I just want you to tell us about your husband, Sean, who he was, how you met, like what defined your relationship.
Gosh, when I met Sean, people say I don't believe in love at first sight and things like that, but there was definitely a connection when he and I met. And I think it was because I was at a point in my life where I was divorced, I was a single mom, and my older son was almost on his own. He was 16 at the time. And so, he was driving and so I was sort of really set in my shoes. I had my career. I was pretty content with life at that point. And so when I met Sean, it just was like sparks. And we were both in a really good place. And when we met, it was just instant friendship. And we were kind of, inseparable after that. And we shared similar values and what we wanted for ourselves, our family, our careers. And it was just, he was my happily ever after. And we had so many plans and we were so excited about the future. and he didn't have any children. And so, when you fall in love, you will do it again. And
Yeah.
after 23, I think my older son was 23, or I got pregnant, and after we were married, and we were very fortunate because it was difficult for me. At that time, I was 41 years old,
Yeah.
and to have a child. And, God just blessed us with our young son, Gus.
Oh,
And we thought everything was going to be great. But there were other plans for us, obviously, and it was a tough time, and it still is tough to a certain degree. But when my son was 3 years old, uh, Sean was diagnosed with glioblastoma. It's a rare but very terminal cancer, brain cancer, and it was harrowing disease. And if you did nothing, he would have gotten, or he would have probably lived for a few months, maybe 3, 6 months. But we did do as much as we could. And given the standard of care, we got 18 months with him. And we chose the joy and found the joy and found the time to make some really amazing memories with him. And when my son was 5, right after he turned 5, he passed away.
so he had 5 beautiful years with his dad. Um, and I have so many questions where we'll get into that journey of, his diagnosis and after that, and even, after his death. I think let's start just with the before part, right? The before part while he's still here. One of the things that I speak a lot about is this idea of anticipatory grief. And you lived in anticipatory grief for 18 months. And I know you write about this, that up until the very end, you were praying and hoping that he would be one of the very, 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 very small percentage of people who survive this. But what was that like raising your son, working, for Good Day LA as a, reporting while going through? And what was this, I'm assuming you experienced anticipatory grief, but what was that like, that part of the journey?
I guess during that time, it was hard to think about those types of points. It's really only in hindsight now that I can name
Yeah.
those moments.
Yeah.
But like the title of my book, You Can't Do It Alone. You really can't do it alone. And I was very fortunate to have had the support and love of our families. And without them, I know that it would have been much more challenging
Yeah.
and almost nearly impossible to have been able to do what we did. I had the incredible support of our circle of friends, as well as my job, my friends at work, my colleagues, my bosses, and even our TV viewing audience to some degree. Really, all combined helped me get through those very difficult moments during those 18 months. And the community that we had at our church, and also our therapist. I cannot tell you how amazing that our family counselor walked us through every bit of that journey. And it was really the best advice I got early on, at Sean's diagnosis. It was probably within a couple of weeks. One of our friends gave us a call and was like, "Give me a call, call me back right away, right away. Here is what you need to do right now." And she was very persistent about it. And Katie, thank you so much. And she said, "Here are the top 10 things you must do." And the first really on there was find a good family therapist that will walk you through this, not just for the two of you, in your marriage and your relationship and how to deal with a diagnosis and how to move forward, but also in how you speak to your son, because he's 3 years old and you need to be able to have the language to speak to him on that level. And it was the best advice we could have gotten, honestly. And yeah, that was very, very valuable. And
Yeah.
to this day, is
And
very
she
valuable.
wrote, and that therapist was basically help. I mean, she didn't write the book with you, but at the end of each chapter, is it the same therapist that sort of did this book with you, or was that a different therapist? This therapist, there is a family therapist that writes like a section from a therapeutic perspective.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Lauren Schneider was actually a part of the community support group that was a part of our initial um, support with therapy. It was someone else that actually helped us through.
mhm.
And just for privacy reasons,
Yeah, you
we
don't have
thought,
to say.
yeah, for that part of it, it would have been difficult for us to continue. Had she been the actual one to co write the book with me, but Lauren was also someone that I had known through that time period, also specializing in grief, and particularly when it comes with talking to children about grief. And so she's part of our house grief center here in Los Angeles, and she is such a valuable resource as well for me today. And she basically takes our experience and universalize, or she brings it really broadly to everybody so that you can get all the nuggets
Yeah.
from our experience and make it really be relatable to everyone.
Yeah. So, like in the first chapter, which was so heartbreaking, you start with, telling your son that his father had passed during the night and that difficult conversation, and your son feeling upset because he didn't get a chance. You made the decision because he was asleep not to wake him up, but to wait until the morning. And he was upset he didn't get to see his dad before he left. And the therapist really coached you through that, and you describe how she did, and how that really helped you find the words that would not only support your son but support your relationship with him, and support that connection. And then Lauren Snyder at the end of the chapter is talking about how to support your children in loss and grief, right? So for anyone reading, there's these real therapeutic nuggets that are explicit, right? And
Yes,
that kind of
yes.
complement the story. So, yeah, I think that's a really beautiful aspect of the book. I'm going to come back to this social support thing, but just while we're in this thread, you had talked to Sean. Sean and you had discussed writing a book. He was a writer, and you were, he thought you were a writer, but you didn't think you were a writer.
I'm,
And,
I'm not not by trade. No, I mean, I
yeah,
wear a microphone every day. I do talk for a living mostly. I don't even read the teleprompter at work. So I'm the morning meteorologist, and so we ad lib everything. And
yeah,
so to write like an author would write, or the
yeah,
way he would write was really kind of a foreign thing to me. And when he was first diagnosed, you ask those questions of why, like, why him? Why us? When
yeah.
he was a healthy person, he took good care of himself, and it just didn't fit. And so we couldn't help but think that he was a writer. I wore a microphone. Like, we have to bring more attention and awareness to brain cancer. It is one of the, if not the least funded um, diseases out there, federally funded disease. There is no cure for this disease, and it affects everyone, whether
Yeah.
you're young or you're old, white, brown, whatever. So it's a harrowing disease, and even the standard of care has not improved in the last 50 years. So
Mhm.
we couldn't help but think that, you know, there's a reason why, and maybe this is part of our purpose. And so he was supposed to write the book,
When he
and
got better.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it
And
didn't
then
work out, that way. And so I had to carry the torch and make it happen.
And it was a couple of years, I think, 1 to 2 years after he passed, that you really came back to it and said, okay, I'm going to write the book. And you definitely are raising awareness about glioblastoma in the book and about brain cancer, but it's also a book about loss and love and hope and this idea that we need community. And one of the things that I loved, and I'm going to just put a pin in this, but I do want to come back to this, is that you really feel like he wrote this book with you. Yeah.
100%. I still speak to Sean every day,
Mm.
and sitting down in front of that computer, I didn't even know where to begin, really. And I would say to him, like, you've got to come and help me with this. You've got to fulfill this promise with me. And somehow, by the grace of God, we were able to.
Because I just finished a book that will be out soon, about grief. And the way it would happen for me, because I wrote it a lot with Sammy, and I would just say, okay, just come through me. I'm going to move. What I do is I kind of just imagine moving my consciousness from the left side of my brain to my right, which is kind of the more intuitive side. And I stop trying to figure things out and think. I'm like, just get me started. Tell me the next words and the next words. And then it just kind of starts flowing. That's how it worked for me.
Yep.
How did how did it work in action? Because I think this part is really interesting, not because people are going to write a book, but because I really do feel he was communicating with you and through you.
Someone gave me a great advice. Father Eric, I remember going and talking to him about how Sean had made a promise to me and I had made him promise to haunt me, to always be around.
Yeah.
And I remember Father Eric saying, "Do you talk to him?" And I said, "Of course I talk to him." And he goes, "No, do you talk out loud?" And I guess I had realized then that I didn't really talk out loud, but ever since then, I did, and I do still to this day talk to him out loud. And if you listen hard enough and look hard enough, they'll answer you.
Yeah.
And he does, and he did. And when I said, "Help me write this book," I mean, it's hard to explain, but it did start coming out.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but it does.
Yeah.
And
And
so that's all I
does he
can
give
say.
you what other signs or ways does he communicate? Because we talk a lot about that on this show, the ways that our loved ones on the other side can stay connected.
I think there is that definite connection. And I tell my son all the time, like, if you're ever in a point where you need some advice and you don't want to talk to me about it or anyone else, and I said, you can always talk to your father and you can talk to him out loud. And if you listen hard enough, guys, if you look hard enough, you're going to see that answer. You're going to feel that answer inside of you.
Yeah.
And I really think that's the trick, is to listen hard enough. And sometimes I'll be thinking about Sean and a song will come on
Yeah.
that I know is only a song that he would play,
Hmm.
some obscure song. I can tell you so many stories. Like Sean used to tell me, please go and exercise. Please go do some yoga. Because I hate working out. I cannot stand working out. I've been blessed somehow with a very fast metabolism all through my life. And now it's come to bite me because now I'm in my 50s and, you need to start really looking at your heart and your
Yeah.
cholesterol and things like that. And so I remember I had just come from a doctor's appointment, and sure enough, my blood pressure was going up and this and that. And it comes with aging and menopause. And I remember parking the car because I wanted to go get a salad at the at the restaurant down the road, pick up to go. And I was looking for a parking spot, and I'm like, Sean, please have a parking spot open up so I can get my salad and go. And right in front, a spot opened up, and I'm like, yay! Pulled right in, and there was a big sign on the ground that said, "Yoga special, blah blah blah." And so I know it was a sign from him. I know
Yeah.
he was trying to tell me something.
So
There's
did you
so
follow
many,
up?
so
Did
many.
you do it?
You know what? I think I did a free one Pilates class, and then I stopped. So I need to keep going. And then he sends me reminders.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I get messages all the time from animals, from signs, from songs. So I always love to ask about that. And I love that idea. I don't actually speak out loud to him, usually because there's other people around. But I'm gonna start because I think, I talk to him in my head all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm
Do it
gonna
out loud. I'll
I'm
bet
gonna.
you it'll make a difference. Yeah.
I'm going to. I'm going to. That's a great idea. All right, so back to the community piece, the village piece. You can't do it alone. I know that's a huge theme throughout the book. I want to ask you, so much of what you shared, you're so blessed, right, to both be so close to your families and have big families and friends and community. And you share these beautiful stories about like the way, I love the story. I think it was your sisters-in-law, but you were, when he got diagnosed, you got all these books on glioblastoma and you wanted to read them and you planned to read them and figure, learn from them so you could research, right? Which is a natural thing to
Yes.
do, especially when there aren't a lot of treatments available. And they each decided to read a book and made a one-page summary for you.
That's right.
I mean, that's such a great example of a way to support
To help.
someone,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, you shared lots of ways that people supported you in really tangible ways when you didn't, one of the things I always say to people who want to know how to support a griever is like, do not, like, don't bother to say, let me know if there's anything I can do to help, because we don't freaking know what can help and we're barely thinking, right? We're in survival mode.
That's right.
So you have to, it helps to take action. So those friends who just kind of left a coffee on my doorstep or just even sent me a little heart in text every day or showed up, with groceries or whatever. What were some of the other things? I mentioned one. Tell me if I got the facts wrong.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right.
But what
Um,
what other kinds of examples can you give of ways that your community really supported in ways that you
Gosh,
could feel?
so many things from my sisters-in-law, giving me the synopsis from each book to coming and dropping off groceries,
Yeah.
non-perishables, even like things that you just don't have time to go get paper towels and toilet paper. I mean, like just stuff
Yeah.
like that. To our school community who organized the food drive, like every Friday or every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they would have meals delivered just for dinner, and there would be something for Gus, that they know he would eat, like fried chicken and mashed potatoes, or something that's just for him and something for me. To oh, play dates. Oh my gosh, this was huge. My sisters-in-law would organize the kids so that one of them, especially my niece Juliet and Ben, like they would come over for an hour and just play with Gus for an
Oh,
hour in the backyard. They would just play tag, or there was like a little jumpy house, mini one in the backyard, and they would just jump for an hour, and then Gus would fall asleep and
yeah,
take a
wear them
nap. So,
out.
yeah, so those kinds of things are maybe little things to them, but they were huge for us and Gus's well being. And that was so paramount to us, and we didn't want his life to change too much in the way of his routine, and that's what kids really strive to have, and that's what they depend on, is routine. And so to have that kind of stuff organized for him and
Yeah.
for us as best as we can, that was really, really helpful.
What were some of the other things that you learned about supporting? Because he was five
He was
when
three.
Sean,
Well, when he was diagnosed, Gus was 3 years old. And so he really couldn't understand why his father was, who was his number one playmate, by the way, every day,
yeah,
all
yeah.
of a sudden was not playing with him in the same way that he used to. And so we had to tell him about daddy's diagnosis. And we were very careful. Again, the language that we chose with therapists and the help, we talked about being sick versus having cancer. Those are two very different things. And
Yeah.
we were very careful not to say that daddy was sick because, is that something I can catch? Is that something
Yeah,
mommy can
yeah.
have?
That's a
So,
good point.
so we really talked to him in plain terms, at his level of language and the words. But we told him that daddy went to see the doctors and he was diagnosed with cancer. Do you know what that is? And so we talked about cancer. We talked about the treatments and so on. And so he knew that daddy had cancer and he had to have some help from the doctors, and he wasn't feeling his regular self, and so he couldn't play with him like he used to. And so he understood those things, and so he was grieving daddy too, in a way, right?
Yeah.
The daddy that used to be to the daddy now. And we talked about this afterwards, but those are the things that were happening during that time.
How you move through the diagnosis and the illness with Gus, and I'm thinking, he was experiencing his own anticipatory grief. He didn't know
Oh yeah.
necessarily that his dad was going to die, but he knew that he, had cancer and was not feeling well and was not himself. And with brain cancer, obviously your personality changes, your ability to vocalize changes, your ability to
Hmm.
move changes. So he was witnessing, I'm sure,
Yeah,
that transition.
he
Um,
was. Yes, in real time. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And you also mentioned this beautiful moment, which really touched me, and I'll explain why, not just because it's touching, but where, and this was while Sean was still here, that your mother took you by the hand and took you to this cemetery memorial garden, which is right in the middle of Westwood, which is one that I am very familiar with. It was a place that you mentioned in the book that you used to go because it's this gorgeous, beautiful little oasis kind of in the
Yeah,
middle
in the
of
middle
Los
of all these
Angeles.
buildings. Yeah, yeah.
But guess what? Sammy is buried there too. His ashes. Isn't
Oh,
that
wow.
crazy? I had no idea that until I read your book.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but that's where we laid some of, my husband and my middle son. I wanted to just spread his ashes, which I have done and had kind of celebration of life ceremonies. But my husband and my youngest son really wanted a burial and a marker and that. And so we did it there because Sammy would have loved to be buried where Marilyn Monroe was,
It's
and
a
he left
it's
there.
a famous
Yeah,
cemetery,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So we had a whole ceremony, which I would never have done if my husband and son hadn't really wanted it. But it was unbelievably beautiful and healing to do. We buried some of his ashes, essentially.
Mm.
But there's a marker there, which, P.S., I think I'm the one that goes more than anyone else. When it was really for my youngest and my husband. But I thought that was really amazing that we ended up, but that was a powerful.
What a coincidence that you and I have that in common.
Yeah, yeah. But
Mm.
you described this moment where your mom, maybe when you weren't even really ready or wanting to think about it, but you had learned that, getting a burial plot in advance, not being in a hurry, right, makes it much more affordable and much easier. So you decided to do that in advance, still
Yes,
holding I mean, he could have used it 20 years from now, right?
that's
Whenever,
right. That's
but
right.
getting that must have been something.
That was a very difficult day. That was a
Yeah.
very, very emotional day for me, certainly. And I was very grateful to have my mom there holding my hand through that. But, sometimes your younger life or your life before kind of prepares you in many ways for your life to come. When I was 7 years old, my own birth father passed away suddenly in an accident. And so my mother was very familiar with um, the feeling of loss and grief, but it
Yeah.
was under different circumstances. So she knew that this was something we needed to talk about. And knowing the disease of glioblastoma, knowing brain cancer as we were moving through the treatment time, um, that reality was definitely facing us. And I can't remember exactly who or where I got the information about how, well, you don't want to wait to get an estate planning in place
Yeah.
after you want to do it before. And boy, were they right, because there's a hefty discount that you can take advantage of if you do it before you need it versus when you need it. And so we were fortunate to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good tip. And for anyone listening who's maybe facing or loves someone who's facing a terminal illness, that's really, really valuable advice. People often assume that having anticipated the loss and have time to process the loss and going through a difficult illness. I mean, I've gone through this with my dad and to a certain extent with my mom, although she went rather quickly once she was diagnosed as terminal. But my dad was ill for a very long time and it was very draining and very difficult. And I was prepared, prepared, prepared. But people assume that if you already went through the anticipatory grief, that should prepare you
No.
or what comes next once they're gone. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that as someone who had time. You had 18 months to prepare, even though you were holding on to hope, you still also were simultaneously preparing. What has that been like? And what was that like on the other side once he had, gone on that day and after?
Yeah. You know, when you're going through those 18 months and witnessing the decline, those deficits start coming in and you start really wanting your loved one to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You want them to not be suffering anymore. And so there's this balance of hope that they're going to get better and get well. But then there's also facing the reality that you don't want them to suffer. And so you're constantly balancing this line of never giving up hope, but you're also wanting them to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And so that was always such a mind. It was emotional and draining and confusing. And that's why I think having a counselor really helped during that time. After he passed away, which thankfully he did pass peacefully at home here with us. Um, and then you realize they're not breathing now and it's just their body. And you'd give anything to have them be back. You
Yeah.
just, as much as you don't want them to suffer anymore, you also still wish that you could go back. I would go back to
Yeah.
those times. Um,
Yeah.
you grieve every deficit during that time when he was not able to walk anymore or when he was not able to speak anymore. So there were just all these different steps.
Yeah.
And then after, of course, that loss was there was just this vacuum in a hole. And you go through that first year of him being gone, and it was kind of a blur, to be honest, those first 6 months.
Yeah.
And I can't even remember who exactly was at the funeral. It was that much of a blur sometimes.
I get it. Yeah.
And I have to say the second year was probably even more difficult than the first year.
Yeah. That's pretty much
And
the norm. The first year you're in shock, and the second year
you
you
have this
are.
sort of like image of, okay, 1 year, you're going to feel a difference after the 1 year. And yeah, you do feel a difference. It's worse. It felt worse. It felt heavy. And then for me, um, writing the book was therapeutic, absolutely. But by the time I finished the book, the pandemic started.
Mm,
And that was once again another trigger. Um, and that was very difficult for us because we were sequestered, if you will, at home and that we were alone. And it was just, I remember developing physical, just I got ulcers and I lost so much weight. And I really feared that I was going to develop a disease. And the last thing I wanted to do was do that because we had our young son, you know.
yeah.
And so we got through that. And I wish I could tell you that it's easier or it's not as painful, but it's not.
Yeah.
That part will never go away. I have accepted this point in my life where you can be very happy at the same time as being very sad. And
Amen.
I
Yeah.
think that's what I have learned through this whole thing is that it's okay. It's okay to be happy. I've allowed myself to find happiness, but also be okay with the fact that it also lives with sadness. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah. It absolutely is. And that's one of the most, I think, important lessons to help us move through loss. What supported you? I mean, you mentioned therapy. I know you also mentioned being part of this support group. You talk about that in the book, how
Yes.
key that has been, so you have your village, your friends, your family, you have your therapist, you had the support group, which, you didn't want to join at first.
I didn't
I
know.
didn't, I'm the same way. I'm not, I thought it was, I've always said I love leading groups, as a therapist, but I've never really been a group participant. And I actually started a group. Initially, I thought it was an act of service. About a year after Sammy died, I decided, okay, I got to do something. There's so many grieving mamas reaching out to me. I'm just going to do an impromptu grieving mama meetup, And so I just put something on social media and said, if you're a mother who's lost a child, come to Tower 25 on the Santa Monica Beach at 10:30 a.m. this, Saturday, this date. And when I saw these 10 women walking down the beach toward me, I like broke into tears because I realized in this moment, oh, holy crap, this is not just an act of service. This is for me too.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and you have spoken to that too, how important. So were there, I know that was a support. What was there anything else that you feel really helped you get through? I mean, I know we never get over it, but we kind of can move forward with it. What are other things that have been helpful, if any, in moving forward
Well,
with this loss?
just to back to my support group, I
Yeah.
would call them the samurai.
Aw.
Um, they, well, Otto, the one gentleman in our group whose wife passed away from glioblastoma as well, referred to all of us at that time. There were seven of us, the seven samurai, and because if this is how harrowing of a disease brain cancer is. Um, there are support groups out there for families who have loved ones going through cancer, and it can be any kind of cancer. It's cancer support groups. But with glioblastomas specifically, there was a support group just for caregivers
Mm,
for glioblastoma. And that's how hard and specific this disease was. And I remember I would walk past that flyer at the hospital where my husband was getting treated, and I would just ignore it for the first 3 months. I remember I would see it all the time. And, but I was coming to this point of just desperation. I remember, and I turned around and I was crying because I didn't want my husband to see. And I was sitting next to this bulletin board, and there it was, like in my face. And so I thought, okay, this is a sign. I've got to call. I've got to call. And I went to the first meeting, and I remember sitting in this room, meeting every single one of these people who are still my friends today.
yeah.
And in fact, we just met up, and it's been 10 years this past December. And we just met up for lunch, and they really were my light lamp posts. They were my light posts that guided me on this path that was just pure darkness and terror. And without them, I know that road would have been so much harder for me. And I just cry because I'm so grateful for all of them.
Yeah.
And it's been 10 years, like I said, but um, we still get together and we talk about our loved ones, yes, but we also talk about new loves.
Yes.
And so I was really inspired by them and how they were able to open their hearts back up again. And so after about 5 years for me, um, I did open myself up again, and I did go out, and my friends were trying to set me up with some people, and it didn't work at first. I was like, I'm just not ready. I'm not ready. And but about, I'd say 5 years ago, I met someone, and we've been together ever since. And he's just been a real joy and a real light in my life, and has just brought he has one son, and he gets along really well with my son. And so we've just become this blended family now. And I'm just so grateful for how supportive he is and how he has just embraced Sean into our lives. And he asks about my heart and where I am today, certain key moments here and there. And throughout the year, there are these triggers. And sometimes we can kind of spot them down the road, and sometimes you can't. And so he's very sensitive to my feelings and my heart. And just, I told Sean, I said, hey, if you want someone to be in my life, because we talked a lot before he passed away, and he had made sure that he wanted to let me know that he had my blessing to share my life because I was young and this and that. And I'd say, you shut up. Don't you talk that way. Because if it was the other way around, I would say, no,
Yeah.
I will come and haunt you, like haunt and
Yeah.
haunt you. And but he said, no, no, you deserve to share your life. And I would just ignore him. I'd be like, no, I would get so mad at him. And so I'd say, well, then you'll have to bring someone to me because I'm not, and sure enough, so I think he did. I think he did bring someone. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
met him, your partner. He was taking photographs at Grieftastic.
That's right. That's
He's
right.
very handsome.
He's very cute.
Yes, he was very cute. It was funny. My girlfriend and I were, we're like, oh, the photographer is very cute. And then somehow I think when we were talking, you were like, I was like, oh, that's
Ah,
the
I'll
boyfriend.
have to I'll have to tell him that. He'll
Yeah,
be like,
tell him we were
oh.
admiring him.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's so sweet.
But yeah, he has a lovely energy and that's what you're mentioning is so crucial, right? Not only the willingness to open your heart again to love, and not just if you lost a partner. I think in general, it's so easy to shut your heart down because you learn so deeply that to love, you have to be prepared to lose, right? You know, all of us, that kind of heartbreak is so devastating. So to open your heart again just to love, um,
It's
a
it's
lot.
a big risk. It's there, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's something that is in the back of my mind, but it's as Innes, his name's Innes, he would say, if there's just a little room in there for me, I would be very happy with that. And
Aw. That's
so
such a gift. And
yeah,
that's a big part of it too, what you were saying about him. I think that's really crucial, whether it's that you've lost a parent or a partner or a spouse or a child, that you are with someone who makes space, right? And especially in a love relationship, you have to be really, well, first of all, you have to be really selective about who the partner is because you have a young child, right? So they have to, you already are thinking about it that way, but then also that they have to be someone who respects that you already, that there is another man in your heart, and who will always be in your heart. Very different than if you had gotten divorced or, so to make space for your love for Sean and your grief for him and know that he's sharing your heart with him is a really, really important quality, I think, to require in a love relationship for a widow or widower or someone who's lost their love.
yeah,
And it's a real testament to him.
yes, I'm very lucky that I have found someone who's very aware and very sensitive to it. So yeah, no, definitely. Mhm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And how is Gus, your son, today? What is he about 10 now? How old is he now?
No, okay, so it was 10 years exactly this December when we marked the anniversary of his death, my late husband's death. So Gus is now 15. He just
Oh,
turned 15. So um, that was a whole other thing too. We wanted to make sure that Gus's birthday and Christmas and everything was separate. And so thank God that Sean passed on December 28th. Gus's birthday is on December 13th. And so he was able to be there for Gus's fifth birthday.
oh,
And so yeah, no, Gus is 15 now. He's grown up.
yeah.
And what's interesting about Gus is that he's just like his father. He has definitely my coloring and my features, but I'm sure if Sean were sitting in between us, or he was in between me and Sean, you would go, "Oh, he's definitely a half of you and half of you." And but he has his dad's mannerisms. He
Isn't that
has
wild?
his dad's tenacity and stubbornness and his love for basketball and sports. And so it's just amazing that he's a daily reminder of the love that I have with Sean
Yeah.
and still have. Yeah.
What a beautiful testimony. And, that can be a beautiful reminder and it can be a painful reminder, right? To see those glimmers
It's
of Sean.
it's that again, so happy,
Yeah.
just such happiness and joy that I have when I see Gus. But then I also have a little bit of sadness because
Yeah.
he doesn't have his father to share this or that with him. And then, I let that feeling come, and then it does go, and then it settles into the gratitude of Sean is here. I
Yeah.
feel him, and I know that Gus feels him too. And I know that he'd be so proud of him.
Yeah. And you have had such a beautiful village of women and men who have been able to hold that masculine energy around him and support the two of you. And now he has your partner, and it sounds like a beautiful relationship with him, and an ongoing relationship with his father. Thank you.
Yes.
This has just been such a beautiful conversation. If there were one thing, just in closing, that you wish someone, I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but I'll ask you anyway, because what you wish someone had told you earlier in your grief journey, like what's one thing that someone might take from this that you could advise someone who's facing, the anticipatory grief or has recently lost someone?
I guess it would have been to probably find my support group sooner,
Yeah.
um, have found counseling sooner, even. And we found her pretty quickly, but to have that kind of support is just so valuable. And even if you don't have a family around you, even if you don't have that friendship circle or that community, you can find that in your therapy. You can find that in a support group.
Yeah.
And we have the means to do that now, especially now with technology. You don't have to have them directly in your community, that's you can see. You can have it here,
Yeah.
on Zoom. You can have it on your phone. And so seek that out. It's really important because they're there for us. You cannot do this alone. You shouldn't do this alone. And ask for the help. We're so conditioned to be strong, especially as women. You're strong. You can do this. You can do this on you. You don't need anyone's help. But you know, don't deprive others too of helping you. It feels good to help someone else. Let your family, let your friends, let your community help you, and you will be better for it.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think there's something so unbelievably healing to be in a community of people who intimately understand your pain. There's such relief there. And to understand, which was a lesson I had to learn as well, that when you allow others to support you, because as women too, we're taught, you can do it alone and you're
Mhm.
the supporter. That's your value, to
Right.
be there for whoever needs it, right?
Right.
Not to receive, because God forbid you're a burden, right? But when you allow others to give to you, you are actually giving to them. And I know you speak to that so beautifully in the book about how um, what a gift it is to others to allow them to step because they feel helpless and they want to support you. And I've gotten that, I had to really take that leap myself. When I remember a girlfriend finally said to me, "Look, we feel helpless. We're in pain. It helps us to help you. Let us help you." And I was like, "Okay." And since then, I've gotten to be an amazing receiver. But, but I had to open that muscle and start exercising it. So I love that. I love both of those pieces of advice. And as the title of your book says, you can't do it alone. Thank you so much, Maria, for joining us and for crying out loud with us, because that's how we heal. We're all in this poop show together.
That's
Um,
right. That's right.
we have
The,
to be
we
open.
have to we have to be there for each other. And oh, another thing someone told me, hey, cry, because the more you cry, the less you have to pee.
Good, good advice to end on. Thank you. Thank you for the book. Thank you for your advocacy. And thank you so much for sharing this time with us.
No, thank you for having me on your show, and I look forward to seeing you at our special place soon, hopefully.
Yes, I will meet you there. We
Okay,
can say
sounds
hi.
great.
I'll say hi to Sean and you can say hi to Sammy.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening and crying out loud with me. If something you heard today helped or made you feel less alone, please follow, share, and review. And for more tools and a community that deeply understands you and your pain, visit the Grief Healing Collective at drlauraberman.com/grief healing. I'll see you next time on Crying Out Loud.
There's a hollow in my chest, where your laughter used to be. Space at every table, an empty seat I see. The woman I was before you left didn't make it through, but love is still alive in me and still there between us two. They say just let it be alright, just keep your pain inside. But love this deep and pain this true were never meant to hide. So I'm crying out loud, I'm not holding it in. I'm shrinking my heart for the shape I am in. If grief is the echo of love that resounds, then I will warn you crying out loud. Ooh. Some days grief's a tsunami, some days it's just a wave. Some days I'm barely breathing, some days I feel so brave. But I am learning slowly what the breaking's about. The only way to freedom is feeling it out. Every tear that hits the ground is not a sign I'm weak. It's the sound of love still reaching, still learning how to speak. So I'm crying out loud, let the whole world see. Love didn't leave, it's alive in me, and the dark's a doorway if you let it be found. We don't heal by hiding, we heal crying outside. What if the ache is holy? What if the wounds to go? What if the heart that's shattered can love even more? I'm softer in the tender places, fiercer where I stand. Grief didn't end my story, remade who I am. So I'm crying out loud with my hands unbound, not apologizing for the tears I found. If this is the cost of a love so proud, then I will live in